You're cosplaying as a tough guy while you bootleg for six grown-ass men who jumped on a nurse and shot him dead. This is not the tough position.
In this video, we break down the moment a heated political discussion reaches its breaking point. After nearly 45 minutes of constant disputes, interruptions, and repeated attempts to challenge what many viewers believed was clear video evidence, Brian Tyler Cohen and Tim Miller finally run out of patience. What follows is one of the most talked-about exchanges from the entire discussion. What makes this moment stand out is that it was not carefully staged or designed for headlines. It emerged naturally from a conversation that had become increasingly tense as competing narratives collided with the facts being debated. As frustration built and the arguments grew more repetitive, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Before we examine why this exchange has generated such strong reactions and why many see it as a significant turning point, let's look at how the situation unfolded.
It seems to me it's been a very significant 48 hours, actually, for Donald Trump, for his administration, for the wider public, and for this issue of trust and being able to believe what we see with our own eyes. Because if you listen to what these administration officials were saying in the immediate aftermath of this killing, then this guy, Alex Preddy, was about to launch a massacre of law enforcement officers, when we could all see from the various clips that were coming out that that simply wasn't true. He was defending a woman protester who'd been thrown on the floor. He was then thrown on the floor himself. Yes, he had a weapon on him, but at no stage did he brandish that weapon or represent any threat to the 8 ICE officers that engulfed him. And in fact, they took away his gun and then they killed him. So given that we could all see that, I think what's happened here, which has been really pretty unprecedented and quite fascinating to watch, is that Donald Trump has realized this has crossed a line many people may not have thought Donald Trump was aware of or cared about. And that line being, if you try and tell people that what they've just seen with their own eyes is not true, they're not going to buy it, trust in you is going to erode, and your polling numbers are going to get slayed, and ultimately it will cost you at the ballot box. What's your reading of it?
Well, I hope you're right, Piers. I hope that Donald Trump changes course. I think we've seen some very minor evidence of that, replacing Greg Bovino with Tom Homan. For me, I would have preferred that all of the ICE and CBP agents be removed from Minneapolis immediately and then taken off the streets and brought back to D.C. or to the border where they're supposed to be. Minneapolis is famously 300 miles from a border. And, then they could reassess what a program would look like where they actually went after the worst of the worst rather than menacing American citizens and menacing people who are here legally. And I do agree with you that the American people overwhelmingly do not want and do not support a government that murders its own citizens in the street, that unloads a clip and shoots them 10 times, fires 6 bullets into their dead body on the ground, and then lies about them and smears them after they're dead. I think that the vast majority of Americans don't want that. You'll probably be able to find a couple of shills to come on and defend that on this show, but I think the vast majority of Americans say, no, we do not want murderous mass thugs anonymously killing our fellow Americans. And so I do think...
Well, it's because of mindless people like the gentleman that just finished speaking is the reason why people have this perception that Donald Trump is somehow doing something wrong. They deported 600,000 people. They've deported people who have committed murder, rape, all kinds of dangerous and felonious crimes. Also, they're deployed in all 50 states. Why is Minnesota the only state that's having issues? And then to get on TV and say that a guy is observing the First Amendment and Second Amendment while he's at a protest assaulting ICE agents, Border Patrol agents. He committed an assault, a felonious assault against the ICE agent. That's how he got into a physical altercation while carrying a firearm without notifying them.
What was the assault?
When the Border Patrol pushed the lady, he went hands on. That is a felony. You cannot do that.
He didn't assault anyone. But Brandon, here's the problem.
Is that not a felony crime?
When you say what you witnessed was an assault,
to physically assault,
Brandon, when you say hang on, let me finish.
Piers,
when you say what you witnessed was an when you say what you witnessed was an assault by Alex Pretty on ICE officers, that is not what I witnessed.
Piers, do you because you don't live in America, you've never done law enforcement, you don't understand the law. And with all due respect,
I've got a home in America. I've lived in America on and off for 20 years.
But I'm saying you are not vested in American law enforcement. When you grab somebody like Pretty did with an ICE agent, that is an assault, subject to an arrest. They had every right to take him down to the...
Moments earlier, Brandon Tatum argued that law enforcement officers acted appropriately in the incident under discussion. From there, the panel spent a considerable amount of time moving through a series of side debates, covering topics ranging from media reactions and immigration policy to unrelated political controversies. As the conversation drifted further from the central event, the focus on the shooting itself became increasingly diluted. Then Tim Miller stepped in and redirected attention back to the incident at the heart of the debate. That shift changed the entire tone of the discussion. Once the conversation returned to the actual events and the evidence surrounding them, tensions escalated quickly and the disagreement moved into entirely new territory.
ICE is doing in Minneapolis is far beyond that remit. They are going after people that have asylum claims that have not been adjudicated. They're going after protesters. They're going after American citizens. They've jailed American citizens. They're going into neighborhoods. They're bullying people. They're pushing people, and they're murdering people. So if your issue is let's deal with Hennepin County prisons and figure out how to work better with them, then you don't need to murder American citizens to achieve that goal. And so we can agree on that. I wish you could agree. The American citizens should be shot dead.
Let me bring in Brandon.
More issues.
Let me bring in Brandon because I want to bring in just an update from Polymarket about Kristi Noem. It's quite interesting. We're following the prediction markets on this subject of who will be the first to leave Trump's cabinet. Almost uniquely, he's a year in and hasn't fired anyone from his cabinet yet. Polymarket has a $1.5 million market open, a lot of activity. As we speak, Kristi Noem is at 39% to be that first member of Trump's cabinet to be fired. She was just at 13% before the two deaths in Minneapolis. I mean, Brandon, do you think she's on the way out? Is she going to be the first casualty of Trump's cabinet?
I don't know. I think Trump is very loyal to the people that are in his cabinet right now. That's why he hasn't fired anybody so far. But I do think that she's becoming incredibly unpopular on the Republican side. Now, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with it. I don't pay attention to what she's saying. I don't care unless people are getting arrested and they're doing their job. But I do believe if she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing, if she's doing things illegitimately and is not working on behalf of the country, get her sorry self out of there. And I believe that with anybody that's in the cabinet. I don't owe no loyalty to none of y'all. If you don't do your job, you need to get fired. And so if there's a fair evaluation of Kristi Noem and what she's doing and not doing, and if she's not doing what's right for the American people and she's committing fraudulent behavior, fire her. I think we all understand it. Can I give you the Border Patrol response real quick? Law enforcement and Border Patrol connection, because I worked in law enforcement in Tucson, which is a border state, and we work well with Border Patrol and ICE. And there's a big difference when you arrest somebody and they are illegally in this country. Now, local law enforcement not have jurisdiction to arrest them for their federal crimes, but we do take them to the jail and we put them on what we call an ICE hold. Therefore, they cannot leave the jail facility even when they're done serving for their city crime or their state crime. The ICE agents will come and verify them and take them. That keeps the community way safer because ICE does not have to go into the community. When you force ICE to go into the community and then you have idiots harassing them, doxing them, throwing stuff at them, blockading their vehicles, you create an unduly risk. This is why ICE is patrolled, or even Border Patrol in their assistance with ICE around the entire country, and you don't see people getting shot, and hardly anywhere else. You would say 99.9% of the shootings are in Minnesota. What?
Yeah, dude. Okay. You do see people getting harassed in other places, actually, not just Minnesota. Minnesota's just the only place they've murdered anyone so far. But they've harassed people. They jailed citizens in California. They shot people in Chicago.
Give me the murder numbers. Give me the people who have been murdered by ICE, and then you tell me where they were murdered
this year. There have been 2 people murdered by ICE in Minneapolis so far. And then
one city.
Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And then they shot a guy in Chicago, a gal in Chicago.
Patrol agent. No, Renee hit an ICE agent with her car. She got shot. This guy came and confronted and physically assaulted and had physical contact with a firearm.
I can't do any more of this apology of killers.
You don't have to do anything.
You can do whatever you want, man, but do not smear dead people.
If this guy goes to jail for shooting Preddy, let's do a
shameful. What you're doing is shameful. You should be ashamed of yourself.
You're a wuss. You don't understand the law. Don't get mad at me.
I actually think it's.
I'm not mad. You're just. You should repent.
You don't understand the law.
You should find the Lord.
I think what Brandon is doing. I think what Brandon is doing is actually. I think what Brandon is doing is actually pretty instructive, because the reality is that everybody saw the video. Like 85% of Americans saw this video.
It doesn't matter. You don't understand the law.
Brandon,
so what you're seeing is not according to what they're going to be judged by.
Control yourself. Brendan, try to control yourself.
No,
for like 2
you.
seconds,
How about
okay?
you listen?
Try to control yourself.
Know what you're talking about.
Try. Just try like 2 seconds to not talk.
Give me the law. Give me the law that he's going to be prosecuted under.
Brandon, 2 seconds, man.
Give me the law he's going to be prosecuted
this
under.
This isn't a good testament for how law enforcement officials are able to control themselves. 2 seconds
it's not a good testament how.
The reality is the vast majority of Americans,
wusses like you don't know the law.
Brandon, just shut up for like 2 seconds.
Where's the law?
The vast majority of Americans saw this video. We know what we saw with our own eyes. Even conservatives, even independents know that what ICE was doing was completely unjustified. That he was holding his cell phone and was bombarded by 6 grown-ass men who shot him dead. And the fact that you're standing up here, Brandon, just shut the fuck up for 2 seconds. The fact that you can sit up here and claim.
You talking tough ain't gonna work with me, buddy. Give me the law.
What are you going to do? Shoot him 10 times? Shoot him in the back of the head?
This whole time, you're cosplaying as a tough guy while you bootleg for 6 grown-ass men who jumped on a nurse and shot him dead. This is not the tough position. You are defending. Being a bootlegger is not a tough position, my dude. Being a bootlegger for a bunch of grown-ass men who killed a nurse who was helping a woman is not a tough position that you think it is.
Gentlemen,
where is he going to be charged with?
Can I just say, Gentlemen, I had hip surgery a week ago, and can I just say it flared up at the start of this debate. It's carried on flaring ever since, and the only thing I can put it down to is that you lot have shouted at each other now for 45 minutes without drawing breath, and I owe it to my new hip to call an end to proceedings. But thank you all very much.
What unfolded was far more than a typical political argument. It became a revealing example of what happens when competing narratives are tested against evidence in real time. For nearly 3/4 of an hour, viewers watched participants challenge one another over facts, interpretations, and responsibility before the discussion reached a point where the underlying disagreements could no longer be avoided. The center of the controversy was video footage that became the foundation of the entire debate. Supporters of one side argued that the footage clearly documented a sequence of events involving Alex Preddy, a protester, and law enforcement officers. Others insisted that the circumstances surrounding the incident justified a very different interpretation. The disagreement was not simply about politics. It was about what viewers believed they were seeing and whether public officials and commentators were accurately describing it. That is why Tim Miller's argument became such a focal point. His position was that policy disagreements are one thing, but asking people to dismiss what they believe they witnessed for themselves is another matter entirely. According to Miller, public trust begins to erode when citizens feel they are being asked to reject direct evidence in favor of a preferred narrative. Whether viewers agreed with him or not, that argument became one of the defining themes of the discussion. The contrast between Miller's approach and Brandon Tatum's style quickly became noticeable. Tatum frequently referenced his background in law enforcement while defending his perspective on the incident. He argued forcefully that many critics lacked a proper understanding of police procedures and legal standards. His critics, however, contended that experience alone could not settle questions that depended on evidence, facts, and public accountability. As the exchange intensified, the debate shifted toward broader questions about the use of force, legal authority, and the standards applied to different situations. Participants challenged each other over whether the shooting was justified and what legal principles should govern such encounters. The discussion also expanded into larger issues involving consistency, public trust, and political rhetoric. One particularly contentious point involved arguments surrounding firearm rights and public demonstrations. Critics highlighted what they viewed as a contradiction between long-standing defenses of armed civilians exercising constitutional rights and the reactions seen in this specific case. That challenge placed additional pressure on those defending the law enforcement response and became another major flashpoint in the conversation. Tensions continued to rise. The focus increasingly moved away from the facts of the incident and toward the conduct of the participants themselves. Interruptions became more frequent, voices grew louder, and frustration became increasingly visible. The debate no longer felt like a simple exchange of viewpoints. Instead, it became a struggle over credibility, accountability, and who was controlling the narrative. The defining moment arrived when Brian Tyler Cohen openly expressed his frustration after what he viewed as an extended period of deflection and avoidance. For many viewers, that reaction symbolized the boiling point of a conversation that had been building tension for nearly an hour. Supporters saw it as a justified response to repeated evasions, while critics argued that it crossed the line of civil debate. Regardless of where people stand politically, the exchange sparked a broader conversation about media discourse, public trust, and the limits of patience in highly polarized discussions. It also raised questions about how evidence should be evaluated, how authority should be challenged, and what happens when competing interpretations collide in front of a live audience. In the end, the discussion concluded not because everyone reached agreement, but because the conflict itself had become the story. The audience had witnessed the arguments, heard the competing claims, and watched the tensions escalate in real time. Now the question shifts to you. Was Brian Tyler Cohen justified in his response, or should the debate have remained measured despite the frustration? Share your perspective in the comments, and if you enjoy detailed breakdowns of major political and media moments, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for future coverage.